Hello and welcome. This is Captain Tom, and you are on board the Silverwind, so welcome aboard. We have Wilson over in the corner over there. He's our intergalactic robot friend. He is our producer, and, I guess we can call him a Whoa. Wilson, I guess we're already... Well, he's deciding the destination, so I guess he's just going to go ahead and do it. All right, so yeah, co-host, there we go. Well, Wilson takes us wherever we're gonna go. Let's, here, we can actually change this. Yeah, easy day. Okay, so today we're gonna be covering Genesis chapter 29, and with that, we have some news and stuff to cover as far as SpaceX is concerned. And after that, yeah, I think that's going to be kind of the biggest thing today. Oh, yeah, the Europa Clipper. So that'll be a lot of fun. Wilson, we've been here before. Okay, so Wilson took us to Europa. Wilson, let's see here. Hold on. Well, let's make sure we don't drift around here. Let's see. There we go. That should keep us in place. Let's see. Yeah. Easy day. Perfect. So Wilson, what's you wanted to go to Europa today? You're trying to prove a point. What? That we're just that much more efficient than SpaceX? And why are you trying to flex on Elon Musk over there? Okay, well, Wilson felt the need to flex on humanity by proving that he could get to Europa much faster than the Europa Clipper. So, okay, yeah, well, that's Wilson for you. So with that, it's a beautiful background. For those of you who don't know, Europa is one of the few places in our solar system, besides Earth, obviously, that has a potential for life. So with Europa here, these lines that you see around the moon, let's see, do we have a close-up picture on this? Let me bring this up here. I don't know if we do or not. It's very similar to Enceladus. So with Enceladus is a moon around Saturn, and it's one of the moons. Oh, hi Lisa, my Europa. There we go, my Europa. Yeah, it's got little ropes around it. So it has these kind of crevices in the terrain. So this looks like it has had some kind of activity where it's kind of broken up the shell a little bit. So Enceladus is very similar to this. Enceladus, we've observed actual geysers projecting out of the moon, which reveals that there is some kind of liquid ocean beneath the icy surface. With Europa here, it looks like it has a potential kind of a rock core to it, which means that it could also have a liquid ocean underneath its icy surface. We're not entirely sure if there's actual geysers coming off it. We haven't gotten close enough to it. Well, NASA and them haven't. Hey, cool images. Heck yeah. Actually, let's see here. I got some cool images to show you later about the Europa Clipper. I think we can actually, let's go to it right now. Hold up. Let's do this. Go to the eyes of the solar system here. And there we go. Okay, so we got the Europa Clipper right here. We'll kind of deal with that here more in a second. Let's zoom out for a second. There we go. Okay, so we need to go to Jupiter here. Just this guy. We don't need this. All right, so let's find Europa. There it is. Okay, so we kind of get a close-up here. Ooh, this is a good spot for it. All right, so as you can see, we get this terrain right here. So this looks like potential cracks in the ice. It's believed that there's a liquid ocean underneath this, and having a liquid ocean with a potential rocky kind of a base to that ocean, there's a potential for life here. And so it'd be really interesting to see if there is. Now let's go to Enceladus real quick, because I want to kind of compare the two. Yeah, this is why we did a mission to Jupiter and not Saturn. As you can tell, that'd be a little bit more of a jump. Here we go. All right, so Enceladus, we have had, oh, look at that. That is an absolute gorgeous picture of Enceladus. So this has very similar, some kind of big canyons in the terrain. We have actually observed through some closer pictures of this, actual geysers coming off of the moon, which means that there is literally liquid water underneath this. So also another place for potential life to exist, anywhere where you have warm enough waters to be liquid and it has a rocky kind of, ocean floor to it. Then, yeah, I mean, technically all of the physical factors are there. And it'll be very revealing to see if we could capture some of the ice particles that are coming out of that ocean, test it, see if there's any living organic material inside of it, and that sort of. And the Europa Clipper also has scanners and stuff off of it on it, which allows it to potentially scan for things if it can't pick up any kind of geyser here. So, yeah, here, look at that. Perfect. Oh, look at that. They got a nice picture beneath it here. Okay, let's go to Europa. So yeah, so I guess Wilson is wanting to kind of show up Earth here a little bit. That's fine. He could flex on Earth if he wants to. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, getting close to this moon right here, if there's life on it. We'll continue to follow the journey of the Europa Clipper. We'll kind of look at the distance and everything like that of it at the end of the show. But yeah, so anyways, that is why that is significant. Let's go ahead, pop back over here. All right. So today we're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 29, and this is basically going to be following on the heels of Jacob's story so far, where he is leaving to go find a wife, basically, his mother's side of the family. So he's going to have to journey over to basically where Abraham came from when he left to go to the promised land. He left some family behind there, and then his son Isaac got a wife from over there. And so, yeah, so Jacob's now got to do the same. So we'll go ahead, go over to the library, and we'll start the show from there. Or we'll start the reading from there. There we go. Let's go. Yeah, here we go. Found it. All right. See you guys there. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the story here. So one of the things that's really significant about Jacob's story is that he's a trickster. His name Jacob actually kind of means that. It's a kind of refers to him as a deceiver. His older brother even refers to this is why he's called Jacob. He cheated me out of my inheritance and he took my blessings. So Jacob has had a little bit of an issue. We've talked about this concept before, which I think is very important for this. And that's God's perfect will versus God's permissive will. This is it's a good piece of theology for understanding how God allows things, uses people's kind of corrupt behaviors, such as Jacob tricking his family, which is not a good thing, right? But he's using that to fulfill his will, right? So there's God's perfect will, which would be, for no one to sin and, for God to bring about his will through that. But his permissive will is basically work through the messy decisions that people make. So go ahead and take that away. Perfect. All right, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and kind of jump into this reading here. Jacob, one more thing that Jacob did previously is he set out on this journey and he had an encounter with God. At least he had a vision at a specific place where God revealed that he was going to be with him. And then Jacob basically tells God, well, if you do all these things, then I will call you my God. So Jacob has a little bit of a character development here to actually have a relationship with God himself. He seems to not really care too much about God. He definitely doesn't have a relationship with God at this point, but God is totally inviting him into a relationship, and we'll see what happens there. So Jacob's he's decided, Lord, if you do all these things, and you bring me back to my father's home, basically bringing him all the way back to where Isaac is at, then I will call you my God. So let's see what happens with that promise. Let's go ahead, jump into the reading here. Let's go to this, do a far view here. Yeah, and we'll do a few verses. Make sure I got my notes up. Easy day. All right, we'll go through 1 through 3. And let's jump right into it. All right. So Genesis 29, and we'll start at verse 1. Then Jacob hurried on, finally arriving in the land of the east. He saw a well in the distance. 3 flocks of sheep and goats lay in an open field beside it, waiting to be watered, but a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. It was the custom there to wait for all the flocks to arrive before removing the stone and watering the animals. Afterwards, the stone would be placed back on the mouth of the well. Okay, so that seems easy enough, right? The scene here is basically just setting up the scene and setting up this custom, and we'll talk more about this custom in a second. But basically, you know, he's basically arrived to a destination. As a traveler, he knows where he needs to go, but there's not going to be a lot of signs or roads or anything like that at this point in time. And he's going somewhere where he's never been before. They don't have GPS. He doesn't really know if he's arrived at the correct destination or not without asking around and asking people, hey, you know, what's going on here? So comes across all these shepherds here who seem to just be kind of sitting around. So let's see what happens next with that. All right. We'll go through a little bit here. So let's get this conversation. All right. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, "Where are you from, my friends?" "We are from Haran," they answered. "Do you know a man named Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" he asked. "Yes, we do," they replied. "Is he doing well?" Jacob asked. "Yes, he's well," they answered. A lot of short answers here. "Look, here comes his daughter Rachel with a flock now." Jacob said, "Look, it's still broad daylight. Too early to round up the animals. Why don't you water the sheep and goats so you can get back out to pasture?" "We can't water the animals until all the flocks have arrived," they replied. Then the shepherds can move the stone from the mouth of the well, and then we water all the sheep and goats." Okay, a little bit more on this scene. So pay attention to this. This is really interesting. So he has this conversation that's very customary. He's a traveler. "Hey, who are you guys? You know, where are we at?" And they tell him, you know, if a traveler approached you back in those days, it would be customary to answer that question. It's not like today where a random person walks up and just starts talking to you. That was expected back then, right? And they were trying to help travelers because one day you might be a traveler and you want to be helped as well. So they're basically telling them, like, this is where we're at. This is who, you know, kind of, you know, we know these people, we don't know these people, that sort of thing. And they have this custom, right? So if you're picturing a scene right here, you have a bunch of shepherds. It's broad daylight. They're all sitting around this well, and all the sheep are just there, and they're not really out to pasture, right? So they're not really grazing right now. They're not really doing their jobs as shepherds. So they're kind of being lazy with this custom. Or if it's not lazy, it's extremely inefficient. They should be getting water, immediately going back out to pasture, and they shouldn't be gathering all the animals to like take in for the night and that sort of thing until, or at least to not be pasturing them until at the end of the day when it's no longer light, right? So he kind of points this out. He's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? This is a very inefficient system that you have." And they simply just point to it as, well, this is our custom, right? So this is how we do things around here. So he's not used to this lack of efficiency for this. So if you had hired a bunch of shepherds and they were running things inefficiently in this way, you weren't really getting your money's worth for those hired hands. And so that's kind of, you know, the scene that's being set up here is very relevant for Jacob's story kind of going forward, more in the next chapter than this one. So just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and read the next little chunk right here. All right. Let's go through. We'll just go a little bit further. Here we go. All right, verse 9. Jacob was still talking when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherd or shepherdess. And because Rachel was his cousin, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and because the sheep and goats belonged to his uncle Laban, Jacob went over to the well and moved the stone from its mouth and watered his uncle's flock. Okay, so we'll stop right there for a second. So Jacob has taken some initiative here. So this kind of shows Jacob's, this does two things, right? It shows Jacob's character a little bit. So he's like, "Hey, why are you guys sitting around and being inefficient about this?" They're like, "Well, this is our custom," and they make an excuse. Well, Jacob just sees Rachel approach. This is his distant family's flock, and he sees this and goes, well, I'm not going to sit here and wait around. He goes and removes the stone himself, and he proceeds to do the job of watering and taking care of these animals, right? It shows that he's got some good work ethic and that he doesn't like the inefficient system he sees on display. And maybe it's like a gesture of kindness or goodwill to his own family to be like, listen, my distant family's sheep need to be taken care of, the sheep and goats. Those herds need to be taken care of appropriately, and I'm going to do it, right? So we got that part down, but it's not over yet. He does something else here because he's also now seen Rachel, and this is him and Rachel kind of seeing each other for the first time. So let's see this because it's pretty cool. All right. And then verse 11, it says, then Jacob kissed Rachel and he wept aloud. He explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side, the son of her aunt Rebecca. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father Laban. Now, if you guys remember the story with, I was about to say the wrong name. I was going to say Rachel, Rebecca. So with Rebecca, this was, Laban was her brother. She married Isaac. Isaac had, really Abraham had sent a servant to go over and find Isaac a wife from his family over here. And, so Rebecca left her family. They probably haven't had word, and maybe they send messages, but they probably haven't actually heard from her. All Rachel knows is that her aunt, was approached to be married to basically a rich, distant relative, which is like a really good thing, right? So first off, at this point in time, it was a good thing for close relatives in that way, kind of keeping it in a family, because you kind of know these people. They're like, you're our people. It's kind of a safer way to do marriages at this time. And then, once again, it's like to a rich part of the family, out there, right? So there's probably some mystery and like, how's she doing? How are things going? And so it's kind of revealing like, hey, we're family, and kind of a similar situation. So he's comes from a rich side of the family. So this is like a really, a good thing, a good opportunity for Rachel. They kiss. So there's like an immediate romantic connection, love at first sight, if you will. So there's a lot of emotions here. So he weeps out loud when he tells her the whole story. And she seems very excited about it. So she goes, tells Laban, the brother of Rebecca. So let's see what happens after that, because he is quite the character. Let's see. Let's go to that right there. All right. As soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him. He embraced and kissed him and brought him home. When Jacob had told him his story, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we're relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Okay, so we get a little bit more out of this story here. A little bit more character, kind of revealing of character here. So if you remember Laban, so Laban wanted Rebecca to stay a while before leaving to go be married to Isaac. And the idea of this is that he was wanting this messenger who came from a rich relative to stay around and potentially give him more gifts. See if he can get any more wealth or extract any more wealth from this servant and from Abraham's servant, right? So he's kind of, in it for the money, he's a bit of a deceiver himself. So we have Jacob, who's a, deceiver, and now we have Laban. And so Laban is approaching Jacob. Now, clearly Jacob has been, staying with him for about a month. And the whole time he's been working for Laban. As we see, he took the initiative to feed all the flock, or to give water to all the animals, which is a big task. Oh, by the way, that's also very mirrored to what happened with Rebecca. Rebecca watered the camels for the messenger that Abraham had sent. So you get a little bit of symmetry there, which is kind of nice. So you get there's the woman doing it for that generation, and here we go. Here we have another love story where now the guy is doing it. So it's kind of an interesting parallel right there. But yeah, Laban's like, all right, well, you can't work for me for free just because you're family, right? I want to pay you. What do you want to be paid? And so, does Laban have something, is he trying to figure something out here? Because it's a pretty good situation for him. to have someone work for him for free. So what is he getting at here? He probably knows that, Jacob here is interested in Rachel. So we'll have to see what happens next right here as we read this next section. All right. All right. So tell me how much your wages should be. It's a very generous thing to say, too. It's kind of a typical negotiation, but all right, let's go into verse 16 here. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years, if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. I'd rather give her to you than to anyone else. Stay and work for me." Okay. All right, so we have the setup here. There's 2 daughters. One, and there's actually kind of an asterisk here. There's another way that this is read. Let me pull that up for you guys. The 17. It's not showing up immediately. But basically, the description is alluding to the fact that Leah is not as charming, not as beautiful as Rachel. She's the older sister, though. So typically, the older sister would be married first. So we have a situation here where Jacob is wanting to marry the younger sister of an older sister who's unmarried, right? So that's will be relevant here in just a second. But, Laban, he agrees to this. He just simply says, yes, that's great. You can marry Rachel. So yeah, I would rather give her to you than to anybody else. Once again, we're keeping the family, and he's the rich side of the family. So if he's going to have his daughter marry, some distant relative, might as well be the rich relatives, right? So he could potentially benefit from that. And he knows she'll be taken care of and that sort of thing. So yeah, so let's see what the conditions are. He's agreed to work for him. Let's see what that is going to look like. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few weeks. Oh, that's very sweet. So some people will try to say, well, the concept of love was invented at a certain period in the medieval ages. The concept of love has always been around. This right here, he's absolutely in love with Rachel, and because of that, he's willing to wait for her, right? He's willing to work hard and to spend those 7 years to basically earn the right and the privilege and permission from her father in order to do it. It says to pay for, but it's really just for him to basically earn her father's approval, because in the families at this time, the father has an absolute authority, especially over his daughters, right? When he says, you can or can't marry this person, then it's not going to happen, or it will happen, right? Depending on what the father's will is in that situation. So he has to be able to, work with whatever Laban has set up for him here in order to marry Rachel. Surely he probably would have married Rachel right then if he was allowed to. So Laban says, no, you got to work for me for 7 years. That's a long time. And this is also one of the verses in the Bible for one of the reasons that's pointed to often for the Christian custom of waiting till marriage until you basically move in with someone and basically enjoy all the benefits that come from being married. And the idea behind that is, listen, if you really love the person, you'll wait, like Jacob did for Rachel, right? So it's kind of a sweet moment in here. Let's see what happens next. So, we got Jacob, who's a trickster, but he's going legit right now. He's doing all the right things. He's being respectful. He's doing the right thing at this point, but he wasn't doing the right thing when he was with his own father's family. So is God going to forget about those things, the things that he did there? We'll see what happens with this right here, because it gets a wrench kind of gets thrown into the plans here. All right. Finally, the time came for him to marry her. This is Rachel. "I have fulfilled my agreement," Jacob said to Laban. Now give me my wife so I can sleep with her. Well, there you go. So Laban invited everyone to the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. Laban had given Leah a servant, Zilpah, to be her maid. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. What have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? I'm going to keep on going here. It's not our custom here to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn, Laban replied. But wait until the bridal week is over. Then we'll give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me. Ooh, all right. So this is really bad for Jacob here. So he worked 7 years to be married to Rachel, and he gets tricked into marrying Leah. So one of the reasons this is possible is because one of the customs of marriage at that time would for the bride to be completely veiled and covered for the entire initial ceremony that first day. Now, marriage would have had a week-long celebration. So they've had that first night, they've been feasting, they would have been drinking. And keep in mind, this is a point in time where the light bulb hasn't invented. So when things get dark, things get really dark. So you probably didn't have any candles lit, anything like that. And Laban is clearly orchestrating the situation, probably trying to make sure that Jacob has had feasted quite enough to maybe not be completely of the right mind. And then also making sure that Leah was revealed to him, and it's at a time where it was too dark to really be able to see her at all. So he's completely tricked Jacob into marrying his older daughter, which seems like she was probably going to have a hard time finding a husband, which would have been not only to the shame of Leah, but also the shame of her father, right? So he's trying to fix a problem for himself by using Jacob. Now, it's a really sad scene because we don't know what Leah's motivation is in this. It's kind of irrelevant. Once again, the father's will in the family at this point in time is absolute. If he says, Leah, you're going to marry Jacob, any idea of, well, he's in love with my younger sister or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like, yes, sir, that's what I'm going to do, right? Like that's just the way it was. So she goes through with this. She's in this situation. Maybe she wanted to be in this situation. Maybe she didn't. Once again, kind of irrelevant, but you can kind of feel for her because, she's finally married and her husband is not too impressed with the fact that he married her. So that's got to feel pretty sucky. Rachel in this situation, she's kind of absent from the scene. Likely, once again, Laban probably told her to not come around, to go somewhere else. And so she probably spent that entire day and night, crying and upset that, Jacob was going to be given to her older sister. And then we have Jacob in the scene, who's furious. And you could imagine how upset you would be with this. Now, he could try and break off the engagement. Laban asks him, listen, finish the wedding feast week, which means that Jacob could have said, no, I'm not doing this, and left, right? It could have been really bad. Yeah, Lisa here. So heartbreaking to not feel wanted by your husband. Absolutely. And it's a very heartbreaking situation for Leah. Very heartbreaking situation for Rachel as well. And you can see this as like Jacob as a victim. He definitely is in this moment. Laban is not doing, a good thing. Obviously, he's but he's also doing something to Jacob that Jacob very similarly did to his own father and his own older brother, right? He deceived them through kind of costume and deception in a very similar way. So this is kind of, things coming around back to Jacob, God giving some justice to Jacob for what he did back at home. So yeah, that difference between God's perfect will, God's permissive will, even though God allows certain sin to be included in his plan, doesn't mean he's not going to punish the person for doing those things, right? And Jacob has some growing to do, right? He has some growing in his relationship with God. He has some growing in, being a man of God, right? He's got this big destiny of being a father to the nation, the future nation of God's people. So with that, God's got to work on him. So this is a point of humiliation for Jacob. So now he's got a decision to make. Is he going to stay with Leah? Is he going to work those 7 years and also marry Rachel? Marrying two women who happen to be sisters of one another, definitely frowned upon. Definitely not something that is, would also be in God's perfect will. But we'll have to see what he does here. Yeah, overall, very dramatic situation. If you were to create a drama TV show and had this scene on display, the emotions would be very high. But Laban seems to get away with it. He's getting everything he wants out of this deal, and works out pretty well for him so far. So let's see what happens next in the story. Okay, all right. So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. A week after Jacob had married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. Laban gave Rachel a servant, Bilhah, to be her maid. So let's see here. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah. Oh man. He then stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. Okay. So it's a very interesting situation. So he gets married to Leah, gets tricked into that. A week later is going to have a whole nother marriage week and celebration week for the other daughter, for Rachel now. So now he has 2 wives, and he's agreed upon his word to stay with these, being married to these 2 women now for 7 years and to continue working. So in the end, Laban gets literally everything he wants out of this situation. And Jacob, because he loved Rachel so much, said, no, I'm still want to marry Rachel. And then it says right here that he loved Rachel, but didn't love Leah. And you can imagine that situation. This is a very problematic family to be in right now. So the story's not over with yet. God sees everything that's happening here, and he's not distant from this. He's very active in this story. So God is about to intervene here a little bit. We'll get some insight on that. Yeah. Wow. Rough life, Jacob. Yeah. Well, he gets 2 sisters, but I would say, looking at Jacob's perspective here, if you were humiliated into marrying someone you didn't want to marry, I would imagine, it's like, well, he could have like broken off the marriage potentially, right? I mean, divorce did exist at this time. He could have done those things and shamed Leah, and Leah may have never gotten married again after that, right? So it's almost like he's kind of doing her a favor, obviously not out of love for her, probably just out of respect for the family, by not by continuing to be married to her. But he's definitely, he has no problem saying like, okay, well, this whole situation I was tricked into, so I'm not even going to try and love you. I'm just going to love and be nice to Rachel. So yeah, kind of a sad situation, but you can kind of understand the humanness of it, right? Like the perspective of it. When you feel wronged, you want to kind of, fight back in that way. And maybe his just heart wasn't able to love 2 women. He loved Rachel. That was enough for him. And he wasn't interested in Leah. So I can't really fault him for that, right? Just got here. Sounds messy. Yes. The Bible is full of messy human stories. One of the best things about this. And once again, I'm going to bring this up a lot. I'm going to bring it up right now. If you were going to, let's just say, so this is one of the points that people point to, an apologist will point to with this and say, well, this is why this is, not made up. Because if you were going to make up a story of like your ancestors and where your people came from, would you really talk about something as embarrassing as this? You know what I mean? So it's, there's been a lot of embarrassing moments for these supposed to be great men, these patrons, these patriarchs of the people of Israel, and yet their lives are extremely messy. And you think of like the Spartans. Spartans are like, yeah, our ancestor was Hercules. He was awesome. Remember Hercules? Yeah, he's great. We're strong like him. That's typically what people brag about when they point to ancestry and that sort of thing. Especially if you had the free hand to just make up whatever you want, you think you would describe something really cool. But if it's, you know, messy like this, that kind of points to some authenticity of like, yeah, begrudgingly, like this is kind of how it went down. So, all right, let's move forward with this. Jacob's married to 2 women who happen to be sisters of one another. Man, imagine the rivalry in that situation between those 2 sisters. That'd be terrible. All right, let's jump back into the story here because we got some more to read and it's good stuff. Okay, verse 31. When the Lord saw that Rachel was unloved, I'll say that again. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me." Okay, I want to make sure I pull up my notes here because these names mean something. These aren't just like family names that, you know, these names actually have a specific meaning to them, and I want to actually share that with you guys. All right, so this is going to be her first child, Reuben. Reuben means behold, and the insinuation here is behold a son. So Leah, first off, I just want to point out that, you know, very, very much like with Hagar, who was a female Egyptian servant who was being essentially abused by Sarah, right? And just uncared for in that household. God noticed her, right? Even though God was doing this great thing through Abraham and Sarah, God noticed, you know, Hagar and like went to Hagar and helped her. And we see in a situation right here with Leah, God notices that she's unloved. She could just be completely innocent in the situation. She's just doing what her father told her to do, and she doesn't have a choice in the matter. So she's found herself in a really ugly situation, and God's like, I see you, and I'm going to bless you, and blesses her with a child. And so it's a son, Reuben, which means behold a son. Surely my husband will notice me. And you could just feel in that just the pain of the fact that she's not loved by her husband. Can't imagine like a little girl dreaming her whole life of being married and then ending up in a situation where she's married to her sister's husband who doesn't love her. It just messed up, right? So she's thinking this will turn it around. Surely if I give him a son, he'll love me. He will notice me just same way that God has noticed me. So, yeah. All right, let's keep on reading this. Yeah. Therefore my husband will love me. Oh, it is very tragic. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the next verse here. We're just going to do one verse at a time here because again, a big chunk here. All right. Okay. She soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon, for she said, "The Lord heard that I was unloved and has given me another son." All right. So, right here we have Simeon. Simeon means hearing, right? So she's saying, acknowledging that God has heard me, right? And so, and he's noticed that I'm unloved, right? So you still see that sympathy there. And I will say, I mean, I kind of wonder, and the text doesn't reveal any of this, it's just something I wonder about. I kind of wonder, like, is God trying to potentially get Jacob to actually like correct the situation with himself and try to choose to show her some love, right? You know what I mean? Like to show that he cares about her, because surely this is a great thing that she's doing, right? I mean, she's providing sons. It's a wonderful thing. And yeah, so it's God also trying to get Jacob's attention in this. I don't know. The text doesn't say. I can't read behind the words, right? But it's kind of an interesting thing to wonder about. But for sure, Leah thinks she's going to try and gain some traction here. So 2 sons down and still unloved. So let's see what happens next here. Then she became pregnant a 3rd time and gave birth to another son. He was named Levi, for she said, "Surely this time my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given him 3 sons." Oh man. All right. So Levi means attachment, right? And so she was still hoping that she would, through Levi, find attachment to Jacob, find attachment to her husband in a loving way. Now, clearly, these children aren't spawning out of nowhere. I mean, clearly he's fulfilling his marital vows to her, but it's probably very much like a business transaction than anything else, is what it sounds like. There's no love in this relationship. It's like, all right, well, we'll do the things I'm contractually obligated to do as your husband. Beyond that, right? You're not getting my, not getting anything else from me. Yeah, I mean, there's some real bitterness there with Jacob, if you kind of think about that. Definitely not ideal. Or just tragic, right? Beyond not ideal. Third son, there we go. Yes. Third son. I think that's beautiful. That could also mean attachment, right? But yeah, the third son actually sounds really good here. Girls having babies, trying to save relationships stems all the way back then. So wow, yeah, that's people are people, and they haven't changed that much. Actually, I would say they haven't really changed at all, right? You read the most ancient writings, talk about stories of human beings, and really they act and behave the same way as people do now, just under different circumstances. So 100%, yeah, this is wild stuff. All right, but we're not done yet. We still have one more verse. So will we have a fourth son? Let's see. Let's go ahead and get yeah. All right. Once again, Leah became pregnant and gave birth to another son. She named him Judah, where she said, "Now I will praise the Lord." And then she stopped having children. All right, so we kind of see a little bit of an arc here with these, 4 sons. So we now have fourth son. Yeah, brokenness, right? So we now have fourth son, and, fourth son here, who is Judah, and Judah means this. Judah just means praise. It seems that she's done trying to get the attention of Jacob, and she's come to kind of a place where she's okay with just praising God for the 4 wonderful blessings that God has given to her. So maybe once again, this had nothing to do with God trying to get Jacob's attention, to try and love Leah. May have nothing to do with that, because having 4 sons as a mother isn't just a blessing to the father, it's also a wonderful blessing to her as the mother. So she's now focused on that blessing, and who gave her that blessing? God. She's not unloved by God, right? And that's the important part of the story right here. She is loved by someone, it's just not Jacob. And she's gotten to a place where she's okay with that. And I think that acceptance is what you kind of see here. So it's kind of like a beautiful conclusion, not ideal conclusion, but a good conclusion nonetheless. So, yeah, and that's how this crazy chapter ends. The drama is only starting with this story. So yeah, definitely want to be here next Wednesday for the rest of it. Yeah, just kind of overall, let's see if I have any other final thoughts on this right here. We have 4 sons here, and we have another character here that we haven't really talked about, but that's Rachel. And so Rachel is barren. I mean, she didn't really do anything to be, to deserve not having kids, right? I mean, her whole play in the situation was she saw Jacob, her and Jacob fell in love with one another. They waited patiently for 7 years. Rachel has also waited patiently for 7 years. It's not just Jacob who was waiting for this. And then on what was supposed to be her wedding night, her older sister gets plugged into her place. How horrible is that? She finally gets to marry Jacob a week after that, but how humiliating must that be for her? And additional upon that humiliation, she isn't having kids. So that stings, right? So we get to kind of see how that drama plays out here a little bit, but she does have Jacob's love, right? No sons, but has Jacob's love, or no children at all. She's barren at this point. So, yeah, see here, Julianne, which means it's only starting. Sounds crazy already. Oh man, it just gets crazier and crazier from here out. But, yeah, we'll save that for next time. Some good stuff. Let's see here. I think that kind of covers everything that I want to talk about with that. And I think it's a good place to stop. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go back to the front of the ship. We're going to look and see how far the Europa Clipper has gotten, to its destination. and then just kind of talk a little bit about some space facts or some kind of cool stuff going on with the SpaceX here soon. So with that, we'll turn this ship around and we'll head back to Earth. So let's go back to the front. See you guys there. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's try and actually get back home. So we've gone here before. I know how to do this. Yeah, let's go to Earth. I think that should work. Okay. Yeah, perfect. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about SpaceX here. So we have another shuttle launch. So if you remember from the last shuttle launch, yeah, let's do that. Perfect. Make sure I get the info here. So from the last shuttle launch, we had essentially, make sure I get this right. So it was the Starship Flight 5, right? The Starship had its kind of engines come down. It got caught. Everyone saw this, where it actually was able to land without landing in the water. The whole point of that was to decrease the turnaround time for a spaceship to basically, go back and be ready to launch again. And one of the things that Elon Musk is trying to do with this is he's trying to create a system kind of like with an airport, where you can actually, do like a, space travel in like an airport kind of way, like a commercial airport kind of way. So having good turnaround times at low cost, things like that are definitely going to help with that goal. So let's see here. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, we could do the close one. That's fine. Let's see. Yeah. Make sure all of this is good. Here, we should not crash into Earth. A lovely thing. But speaking of crashing into Earth, if you got to fish that equipment out of the ocean, it can also kind of get damaged from the water. So anyways, it was a successful mission. They're going to launch again. This is going to be the fastest turnaround time, so basically a month and 5 days. We're going to have our Starship is going to launch again. It's going to be a 6th flight, and it's going to happen, I think it's on the 18th, right? So double check that. I did put the link in the description of the video, when that's going to happen. So definitely be paying attention to that. And then I also want to kind of show you guys this. So this is a channel that I discovered that I think has some really good information on this topic. Here we go. So it's called What About It, and he goes into a lot of detail with these launches, a lot of the space news, kind of what we briefly cover, some kind of interesting things. This channel goes into some wild depth, right? So if you are really interested in that, I just want to kind of promote this channel, potentially get them to subscribe, hear about some of the stuff that's going on. It's really cool stuff, because this could eventually result in us becoming a spacefaring people. Like, we might end up colonizing Mars because of the efforts that are being done by what SpaceX and NASA are doing right now. Most of it is SpaceX, but I think we all kind of know that Elon Musk is really pushing for this, is making some great progress. So we'll see how far they get. Speaking of, let's see here. Speaking of space stuff here, let's pull this up. Okay, so we want to go to the Europa Clipper. That's way too far out. So we kind of have to go to, let's see, let's go to Earth. Here we go. Look at that. Look, I just want to say, isn't that amazing? All right, so now we need to find the Europa Clipper. So it should be, here we go. So this is going to give us some accurate distance here. Let's see, distance tool. All right, let's hit this. We got the Europa Clipper. Let's say to Earth. How far away has it gotten from Earth? Let's see. This is so crazy. We got 16.06 million miles, or is that kilometers? I'm sorry. Here we go. 9.98 million miles. Oh my goodness, that is crazy. I think we covered this a couple weeks ago. It was like 2 million miles. So it's at now almost 10 million miles. That is insane. Let's just look at that. And this little guy's got to travel got to travel from here, and he's got to get all the way to, well, here. It's not zooming out anymore. I think I have to exit this. Well, we got that measurement, right? All right, let's zoom out. Come on, come on. Here we go. I love this tool. This tool is so amazing. All right, he's got to get all the way over here. I got to say, the stuff that goes into trying to land that shot, it's got to be absolutely amazing. So all I got to do here on the Silverwind is hit a few buttons that Wilson, mainly kind of gives me inputs for. But yeah, the people at NASA and SpaceX and everything, I think this is mainly a NASA project, but they definitely use SpaceX to launch it, right? Use one of the SpaceX rockets, so they're definitely working together. So anyways, that's some cool stuff. So really good things to look forward to. All right, let's see here. I can't wrap my head around how huge space is. Oh my gosh, space is absolutely incredible. The size is just insane. I mean, I think we could actually well, look at this. It's kind of a fun tool. Look at that. Yeah, we're right here. Yeah, and that's for what would you say here? So from a secular perspective, the idea that space is as big as it is just kind of it's just like an interesting fact. It's like, hey, space is really big. This was pointed out to me a long time ago, and it's very true. Space is one of those things where if you were to put the entire thing in a box, if you look in, like, what would you see? You would see nothing. Like the vast majority of space is nothing. And so if you're actually able to shrink it all down into a box, you wouldn't even be able to see the lights. It's just so massive, right? But from a theological perspective, this is insane. The idea that a being, is bigger than all of this, obviously be like a being that's higher than, third and fourth dimension, right? So this would be something that a powerful creator, just kind of showing off his infinite majesty, his infinite glory, his infinite power, by creating this massive universe that just absolutely blows our minds. And very much as we see a lot here in the Bible, and not just the Bible, you see this a lot in different religions, the idea of how important it is for the divine to humble humanity and try to fight against our own pride, because our pride poisons us and leads us down wrong roads. So, this idea that we're just this little place in such a big, and this just looks like a little speck when you start really zooming out here. I just think it's pretty amazing. So yeah, here we go. And on this little rock is where we are. So, I mean, if you're in Australia, I guess. Okay. Yeah. So I'm in America. So we got that right there. Well, perfect. Well, with that, yeah, it's another successful show. We've got tomorrow night, we're going to be continuing To the Moon, a video game that basically we're doing some video game story content. Let's see here, Julian. Hopefully you don't have megalophobia, the fear of large objects. I only have megalophobia when Wilson is driving, ironically. So, yeah. Well, with that, let's just say I hope to see you guys tomorrow night. It's To the Moon. We played it on Tuesday. Is so wild. It's this really old kind of 8-bit style game, kind of overtop game, and it's just like the whole purpose of the game is for its story. So we're trying to basically mine that story out, and so far it's getting pretty emotional. I'm really invested into it, and I would love to see you guys there. So 5 o'clock tomorrow. Hope to see you guys there. And with that, yeah, I think that's it. So we'll sign off. We've got a little outro video here for you guys. Do a little dance party if you want. Definitely be dancing on my end. So with that, I'll catch you guys next time. Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe
Won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 won't you let the light shine through?
To every brave subscriber, thank you. You keep us flying, and we'll see you next time.